Hi guys, Claudia Boleyn here, and this is a bit of a difficult video for me to make. It's something that I haven't talked about before because honestly I've been a little bit scared to be honest, like reaction wise, that kind of thing. But I was watching a show the other night on Channel 5 which was called Me and My Mental Illness, and for the first time ever, I saw somebody on TV talking about emotionally unstable personality disorder, otherwise known as BPD, borderline personality disorder. And this is something that I have. This is a diagnosis I have, and I haven't spoken about it because there's a huge amount of stigma attached to it. A lot of people don't understand what it is, and I feel like we're really coming on leaps and bounds in terms of mental health and fighting stigma, but there's still a huge amount of misunderstandings and hatred directed towards those who have disorders which include, psychosis, schizophrenia, personality disorders, that kind of thing. And I found it very difficult just being honest about my diagnosis and coming to terms with it myself. So I haven't spoken about it a lot. I tend to talk more about the depression and anxiety and emetophobia, but I have got borderline personality disorder or emotionally unstable personality disorder. In the UK we call it emotionally unstable personality disorder, but if you're in the US it is known as BPD, and I tend to call it BPD simply because it's more commonly known as that. So when you're looking for resources you usually find it under BPD. Different from bipolar, by the way. A lot of people ask that. When I say I have BPD, it's not the same as bipolar. So I have got borderline personality disorder, and it's something which impacts my life daily, and it's quite a struggle actually to even talk about. I wanted to talk in this video a little bit about the diagnostic criteria for borderline personality disorder, because a lot of people have some really misinformed and nasty opinions about BPD, which I've noticed, which is very harmful actually, because as someone who has it myself, when I was looking for resources, and when I do look for resources, you often get lots of links from people being, really quite awful about the disorder. And that can be really disheartening and frightening actually. Already with BPD you can struggle with identity and feeling like you're a bad person and wondering, are you a good person, are you a bad person? And to have all that kind of stuff which is so misinformed is harmful. So I've gone on to the website Mind, which is a mental health website in the UK. It's really big, mind.org, if you want to have a look for yourself. So I'm just going to read you some stuff and maybe talk a little bit about my experience with BPD. What is BPD? Borderline personality disorder, BPD, is a type of personality disorder. Personality disorders are a type of mental health problem where your attitudes, beliefs and behaviours cause you long-standing problems in your life. What are the symptoms of BPD? So there is a sort of more scientific sounding list, but this is just an easier to read one, and as I say, it's on the Mind website, so you can check this out. So you have to fit 5 of these criteria. You feel very worried about people abandoning you and would do anything to stop that happening. You have very intense emotions that last from a few hours to a few days and can change quickly. For example, from feeling very happy and confident in the morning to feeling low and sad in the afternoon. You don't have a strong sense of who you are, and it can change depending on who you're with. You find it very hard to make and keep stable relationships. You act impulsively and do things that could harm you, such as binge eating, using drugs or driving dangerously. You have suicidal thoughts or self-harming behaviour. You feel empty and lonely a lot of the time. You get very angry and struggle to control your anger. When very stressed, sometimes you might feel paranoid, have psychotic experiences such as seeing or hearing things other people don't, or feel numb or checked out, and not remember things properly after they happened. So I wanted to go through the checklist and kind of explain how this relates to me. And again, this is it's very difficult for me to put this out there, and the reason I'm doing it is because of this woman that I saw talking about her struggle with this, and it made me feel amazing to see somebody older than me who'd got further. She kind of got further on in life in terms of age, like she'd made it that far, and she was talking about it, and it just filled me with hope, really. It was really good, and that's why I decided to make this. So I am going to be talking about personal stuff, just warning you about that. Okay. You feel very worried about people abandoning you and would do anything to stop that happening. I don't want to get too deep into stuff that's happened in my life because I don't want to talk about that stuff online really. But one early thing which happened to me was my mum and dad split up when I was 3.5, and I was, really close to my dad, and, when I was little, and, he really, doted on me, read me stories, bath time, all that kind of stuff. And my mum and dad separated, and then for reasons, I didn't see my dad for 7 years at all. So I guess there is an early, it wasn't an abandonment, but an early thing that could be perceived as abandonment to a child, I guess. I have spoken about this with my psychologist, and I don't think this is the root of everything. It's just an early abandonment thing. And I think I do struggle with that feeling that that people are going to leave, that people are going to leave me. That feeling of being not good enough, and that when people know the real you, they're not going to want to stick around and stay with you. And I really have struggled with that. I don't think it is because of that early abandonment, I should say. And I should also say that, I have the most wonderful relationship with my dad now, and I'm not doing the blame game or anything like that. But yeah, I did have... I didn't actually, when my mum and dad broke up, I seemed to deal with it fine. I still remained pretty happy, and then my brother was born pretty much straight away. So there was a big change in my life where suddenly I had... my dad was suddenly gone, and suddenly there was a new human in the house, and my brother was there, which actually turned out to be the most amazing thing to happen in my life, because my brother is, my best friend and just amazing. So, but yeah, there was a big thing that happened to me. You have very intense emotions that last from a few hours to a few days and can change quickly. For example, from feeling very happy and confident in the morning to feeling low and sad in the afternoon. This fits me 100%. I do have very, very strong, very intense emotions, and I have done since I was younger. It seems to have got more intense in my teenage years, and from then on it's just got worse. I don't remember... Do you know what? It's hard to tell with childhood memories, because stuff happened when I was younger as well, so it's really hard to unpack it all and figure out what's linked to what, but I have always been a very emotional child, a very anxious child. I used to do ballet when I was younger. I used to do ballet exams, and I don't know if this is to do with the anxiety. It's probably more to do with my anxiety, actually. I have generalised anxiety disorder, which is often can often come about alongside BPD. But I used to get so nervous about exams that, not just normal nerves, I used to just wish myself dead. And one time I locked myself in a toilet and wouldn't come out and would have crying fits, and yeah, it was horrendous. And on the way to school in the mornings, even though I enjoyed school, I was enjoying my school life, I would cry on the way to school and constantly feel like I was going to be sick with fear and beg my mum to take me home, which probably it is a bit surprising that some of my family didn't spot these things in me when I was younger, but I guess it's easy in hindsight. But to me, they seem like pretty big things that, looking back, I kind of think, oh, wow, that's a big deal. But I do get really, really big emotions, and I mean big. I don't seem to have a sort of middle point for emotions at all. There's just a sort of... I don't have a happy setting. I know that sounds odd, but I don't have a happy setting. My happy setting is feeling calm, and I rarely manage to feel calm. I either feel very excited and very happy, or very agitated, or I feel anxious and depressed and low and suicidal, and it's I don't have that relaxed place, and it's exhausting because every day I'm going through these hundreds of emotions and I'm feeling the full force of them as if big things are happening when really hardly anything is, and it exhausts me. It's really tiring, and it's really hard to deal with day to day when your emotions can be so easily sort of triggered like that. It says you can go from feeling very happy and confident in the morning to feeling low and sad in the afternoon, and that is so me, because I wake up in the morning some days and feel great, and then I don't know, it happens so quickly, and suddenly I'm suicidal, And it's hard for my family, I think, because, like, for example, my mum, I live with my mum, and, you know, she'll see me fine in the morning, and she'll come home from work, and I'm, like, really low, like, zombie-like low, and she's always asking what's happened, like, what has caused this, because she assumes, and most people assume, that something big must have happened to make you get that low. But with BPD, it doesn't need to be a big thing. It can feel like, hardly, to other people, it's something that would be hardly anything, and suddenly you're crying your eyes out and wishing yourself dead, and it can be that extreme. It can go the other way as well, so you can start the day wishing you were dead, and, you know, saying to yourself, oh, it's going to be really hard not to kill myself today, like, you're that low, and, you know, really that in it. And then later in the afternoon you're thinking, oh, wow, I feel great, I'm going to do 100 million things. I think in that respect it is a bit similar to bipolar, but it's slightly different. But yeah, I get really big ups and downs, and there's no middle ground emotionally for me. Like, there is no centre. You don't have a strong sense of who you are, and that can change depending on who you're with. This is an odd one for me to talk about because it does apply to me, but at the same time I do have a sense of who I am. It's sort of, I've had to develop a sense of who I am, because I think with BPD, just from my experience, I feel very empty and very blank canvassy, and I do struggle with understanding, you know, who I am. Am I a good person or a bad person? What do I think about things sometimes? Sometimes I just feel like I'm not even here, and everything is too much, and I just think, you know, what am I? What is this? What's going on? You might notice that obviously I use the name Claudia Boleyn. Boleyn is not my real last name, although it is the name that I go by, so technically it is my real last name. I should say it's not my birth name anyway. And I think that what I've tried to do, because of the issues I've had with feeling so empty and confused about this kind of thing, is I've sort of tried to form an identity based on people I admire. And something that people with BPD can do is, it's sort of, some people think it's sort of like copying. It's not necessarily copying, it's trying to deal with that sort of empty, confused thing. You know, there are things I like and things I don't like, and I can tell you the things I enjoy and the things I don't enjoy, but I couldn't tell you about me as a person because it changes so much. You know, I couldn't tell you if I was an introvert or an extrovert. Just a million things. I couldn't describe myself. Or if I were to describe myself, you would ask me the next day or an hour later and it would entirely change. For example, when I was at school, we were doing fake university interviews, and I don't know what came over me. I usually, you know, I wanted to do an English and drama degree, and I had that in my mind, or, you know, an English degree or something, which I'm actually doing now, an English degree. And I got into the interview and I was having one of those times where I had changed again, so I was different, and I went in and very seriously and genuinely told my interviewer that my aims for the future were to get married, live in a cottage in the countryside, and have like 5 children. That was real to me at the time. I thought that I changed a lot. So I think I do, you know, fictional characters are important to me, and historical characters are important to me because they help me ground myself a little bit. And it's hard because with BPD, people who don't have it find it very difficult to understand that. You know, so it's like with the Anne Boleyn thing for me, she represents a lot of what I find admirable, and I sort of want to replicate some of those qualities, but at the same time I want to be myself. So it's a really hard sort of balance to strike. I am... It's not that people with BPD don't have that personality, it's that they feel so much of the time, and they can change so often that it gets confusing. You know, what is my stable identity? What is that? It's really hard to figure out when it's changing all the time. You find it very hard to make and keep stable relationships. Well, this one's odd for me actually, because I haven't had like a super serious romantic relationship, and I'm going to be, you know, really honest, and I know this is going out on the internet, and I know, but I want to be honest with this kind of thing. I just want it out there. I actually am petrified, and I tell you petrified, of being in a serious, like, forever relationship, because when you have something like BPD and you have that mindset, everything is very all or nothing. So I do worry about the state of my emotions when being in love and being in that sort of intense relationship, because just the normal things for people with BPD can be overwhelming. So with something like love, which, you know, normal people find absolutely out there, for someone with BPD, that's a lot. That's a lot to deal with, and you've got to be. I think I want to be in a really stable place for that. So as I've said, like, I'm actually starting to date again now. So I'm on Tinder and all that kind of stuff. You know, I'm looking for love finally, but I left it quite a long time because I wanted to get in that stable place, because it's a lot to deal with if you have BPD. And maintaining those relationships is hard because it means so much to you. It means a lot. That being said, I mean, it's not that I find it hard to keep stable relationships, or maybe I've just got lucky with the ones I've got. I do a thing where, and those who know me or have known me will know about this. I hate to use past tense there, but can I just say, if you're a friend of mine and you've been a friend of mine once, I consider you a friend for my whole life. I just want to put that out there. But I do this thing because of the BPD where I do not talk to someone for a very long time, and I don't know why this is, but I find it really hard to keep contact with people. So my closest friends are those people that are very understanding, very patient. Like, for example, one of my best friends is someone I went to junior school with and infant school with, and we went to the same secondary school, and we're both into sort of singing, musical theatre, and she's amazing and speaks French pretty fluently. But she's very patient with me, and she always has been. She's very good like that, and I'm awful because I will not contact her sometimes for months at a time, but when we do get back in contact, it's like there's been no break in the relationship. So yeah, my friends have to be pretty patient with me like that. I'm not great on keeping up constant contact with people. I don't know, I'm just really not. You act impulsively and do things that could harm you, such as binge eating, using drugs, or driving dangerously. So for this one, there's lots of different things that can fall into this category. So it's basically harmful, sensation-seeking behaviours, according to another site I've just gone on to check this. It's not just like binge eating and driving, it's, you know, shoplifting, like sexual stuff, everything, alcohol, anything that could be potentially dangerous and risky and impulsive. With this one, I don't really want to discuss my particular risky, impulsive behaviours, which I can have, and which, you know, I work really hard to sort of keep down. Yeah, they're just not the sort of things that I want to talk about online, I guess. But I do have this, and the risky behaviours, the impulse control is bad with me. So with BPD, because of the high emotions and feeling everything so intensely, obviously you feel so out of control, and it can be really hard to control your impulses sometimes. So yeah, I do have bad impulse control, although it's getting better. You have suicidal thoughts or self-harming behaviour. So yeah, I have this. Something that I wanted to say about BPD, and something which the woman said on me and my mental illness the other night, and it struck such a chord with me because that's exactly how it feels. I am constantly suicidal, and I have been for as long as I can remember. Now that sounds odd. I don't mean in the sense that I'm going to actively go out and do it constantly 24/7. I just mean that there is a constant undercurrent with me, and there always has been, of death being this sort of release, this sort of beautiful release, and something which is there for me almost as a comfort. I'm aware that's not healthy, by the way. I'm not saying think like that. I'm just trying to explain what it feels like to have BPD. So it's sort of always constantly there. I am 100% always I think it's called suicidal ideation. It's sort of being passively suicidal. It's that feeling of, even when you're at your best, thinking, well, I'm not going to do it, but if a car hit me right now, I wouldn't complain. That's, you know, it's hard to exist like that, and I think it's hard for people who don't understand that to get. You know, I have been suicidal for as long as I can remember. Every day for this past year, there's been an undercurrent of being suicidal. That doesn't mean that I have got to that point where I've wanted to act on it, which is good, and I'm learning to cope with that kind of thing, but there is that undercurrent. I think it's to do with the huge emotions and the exhaustion and being so confused, and things can feel like so much, and there is a lot of pain that comes with BPD, because, you know, being so emotional, reacting to stuff so strongly can make you feel like you've got no skin there. Like, it's like you've got no emotional skin, nothing to sort of protect you, and it's painful, and it's hard, and it's tiring, and it's exhausting, and it just leaves you with this, for me, this undercurrent of suicidal ideation. So I do have sort of like I know that's unhealthy, but it's just something I have, and something I know a lot of other people with BPD have, and it's a hard thing to talk about, to be honest. I have taken 2 overdoses before. This was not being passively suicidal, this was when I got very, very bad, into a very, very bad state, and I thought I'd do something about it. Thank goodness those attempts did not work, and, you know, I don't even know if I took enough or what was going on there. I don't want to talk about the overdose attempts. And I've been a self-harmer since I was about 12 years old. I began self-harming before I knew what self-harming was. So a lot of people imagine that young people, especially young girls, self-harm for attention, but with me, I didn't even know that self-harm was a thing people did, and I was self-harming. It just came as a sort of reaction to me. I used to scratch my thumb with a safety pin because I felt so upset and angry, and when I felt like a big emotion, I would just scratch until my thumb bled, and I didn't even know self-harm was a thing. It was a response to the emotions and feeling too much and feeling completely trapped in my body and not knowing what to do. I mean, I keep diaries. I've kept diaries a lot of my life, and I was reading some the other day, actually. I was clearing my room, and I was suicidal at 12. You know, there are suicide notes from when I was 12 years old, and me writing about wishing I was dead and all this kind of thing, which is very morbid, and it upsets me a lot. It's hard because I was a child, and reading that and knowing that a child version of you has written that is really upsetting. And it upsets me a lot, but that is something I deal with. I'm not currently a self-harmer, yay! I've worked really hard on that, and I have other coping mechanisms which I use, and I'm not, you know, actively suicidal, so that's good, but those are things that a lot of us do struggle with, and I have struggled with before. You feel empty and lonely a lot of the time. Yeah, basically that sums me up. I do feel very empty, and this sounds incredibly, like, emo, angsty, but it's just a default setting for me, as it can be with other people with BPD. I just feel very empty and alone and just scared, really. I think living with BPD, you're in a constant state of kind of low fear, you know, terror sometimes, and you get so used to it that it's just there. And it's only when you come to think about it, you think, wow, you know, I'm living with this in me all the time. It's quite hard to think about, actually, but it also makes me feel proud of myself for, you know, for still being here and fighting through and you know, getting the help that I needed and, you know, sorting myself out. But yeah, I do have like a constant sense of emptiness and just feeling like nothing is ever enough. Everything is too much for me, and yet it's simultaneously never enough for me. It's never enough to feel that sort of empty feeling. You get very angry and struggle to control your anger. Yeah, I've had some issues with anger. A lot of people think that having issues with anger means that you're aggressive or violent, and you know, obviously some people who have anger issues, there's lots of different anger issues you can have. Some people who have anger issues do act in that way. I've never acted in that way. I'm not a violent person at all. Whenever I get the extreme upset and anger, I've always taken it out on myself. So I'm a, you know, self-harmer, and, you know, I can be truly cruel to myself sometimes. And when I feel that intense anger, I've always sort of acted more inwardly. I've had a lot of stuff to be angry about in my life, which I don't talk about online and probably never will actually talk about. Maybe not for years and years and years, maybe. God. Maybe like in 40 years' time or something. But yeah, there's stuff which has made me very angry, rightfully so, and stuff that I've gone through which has made me angry, you know, to the depths of my soul, actually. And I think I'm still working on carrying that anger around inside me. But it's not, for me, it's not a violent thing. It's not coming out in violence, or it never has. I've never been that sort of person. It's a sort of self-anger, you know, an anger. I get so angry at other stuff, and then I take it out on myself, and, you know, that can lead to self-harming and risky behaviours and feeling like you hate yourself, so it's pretty complicated. Okay, so the last one is, when you're stressed, sometimes you might feel paranoid, have psychotic experiences, or feel numb and checked out. This is something I haven't spoken about before properly, but I'm going to do it. I've decided I'm going to do it. Okay, so yeah, I can feel paranoid. The thing for me is I do get psychotic. I can get psychotic episodes. They're rare for me, but they come when I'm very, very low or very, very high emotion. I have had some very scary things happen before because of, psychosis and the stuff I've believed. When I was at school, I went through a time, this is hard for me to talk about actually, I went through a time where I genuinely thought that there was going to be a school shooting. And I used to be absolutely terrified for my life every day going into school. And I ended up hiding in toilets and skipping lessons, hiding in the toilet, thinking that if it happened, then I might be safe and I might be able to sneak away. And I even remember desperately thinking of ways, like, I wonder how I can, stop my friends from getting hurt as well. Can I help my friends? And that was terrifying because I thought I was going mad. I really did think, what is going on with me? It was absolutely terrifying. Now I know, after talking about it with, my psychologist and stuff, it was nothing for me to... It's not actually that abnormal or scary. It's when you hit a very, very high emotion or you're in a state of extreme stress, that's actually something the brain can do to you. It's just that now, obviously, I can recognise when I'm getting into a place of extreme stress, and it will take a lot. Thankfully for me, my life is different now to how it has been in the past. There have been some things which have happened in my life which have... basically sent me to that place, but right now that's not happening, and I can also recognise when I'm getting really stressed, so hopefully I can sort of hold that off. But I have had that experience before, and I wish that when people talked about mental illness that they didn't just talk about the stuff which seems safe to other people, like anxiety and depression, which I also have, but I feel like people with psychosis and who suffer with psychotic episodes really get a bad rep, and I wish there were more resources for those people out there, and that's part of why I wanted to admit that I have suffered with that before, because I think maybe if you know a person, if you watch this and you might sort of know something about me and know me for other things, I won't just be that girl who is mentally ill, I won't just be that crazy YouTuber. Hopefully you'll know me for other stuff on here, and maybe putting a face to it might help people I don't know, understand that it's not this demonic, evil thing. It's just something which can happen when you have very, very high stress, and does happen to people with BPD. And feeling numb or checked out, which is the last thing on here, yes, I get depersonalisation and derealisation where I don't feel like I'm a real person and I feel like the world is not real. Sometimes I get that when I'm very, getting towards psychosis, because I feel like nothing is real, and I'm not convinced. Sometimes I feel like this is all some virtual reality or something, and I'm not sure what's real and what's not, and am I alive? Am I imagining this? And it can get, it can get really scary, and it spirals out of control quite fast. But yeah, I do get very, numb and checked out, and when I'm bad, sometimes I will sit down for a while, and I'll lose a huge chunk of time. I'll just sit there, and I'll look at the time, and I'll think, what did I do during that time? I did nothing. I really did I just completely checked out. I was gone. So I've spoken to you guys about the diagnostic criteria and the symptoms, and maybe a bit what it feels like to have BPD. This still feels really scary. I'm really nervous about putting this online, actually. Properly nervous, because I've been told, some people say don't do it, because I've even had people in the mental health profession say to me, I wouldn't talk about it not because there's anything wrong with it at all, but because there's so much stigma attached to it that you might regret it later. But I feel like, maybe this is me being impulsive now, but I feel like I've put a lot of stuff online already. I put a lot of my mental health stuff out there. I know it helps people. I felt really helped by that woman on the TV the other day, so putting it out there. You can't actually get diagnosed with BPD until you're 18 years old, and sometimes people don't catch it till a lot later. It was weird when I got diagnosed, because they didn't really tell me properly that I'd been diagnosed. It started with my first suicide attempt. When I was in the hospital, they said to me, have you considered that you might have BPD? Because they knew that I was a self-harmer and that I'd tried to kill myself and that kind of thing. And weirdly, I think it was a couple of hours afterwards, I'd been taken into the hospital, I was fine. So maybe that was their first warning sign, because obviously with BPD you can be suicidal 1 minute and then an hour later you're fine, which is probably disconcerting to people. It's very disconcerting to actually deal with that yourself, by the way. It's really scary. That's when it was first mentioned to me. It took about 2 or 3 years to get to this diagnosis, which I only really just got this year properly. I mean, like, it started out maybe you might have it, then it was you have symptoms of it, and then without telling me, suddenly it was, oh yeah, your diagnosis is BPD. So I don't get why diagnosis is such a weird thing in UK mental health. I wish people would be more upfront about diagnosis. I'm not ashamed of it. It's not something which I feel is my fault. It's, you know, an issue that I have with emotions. It doesn't make me hurt anybody. I'm not ashamed of that. And the only way we can change that stigma anyway is if people who have it and people who know about it talk about it, you know, and talk about their experiences with it and make it more real for people and explain to them how it feels. Having my diagnosis for BPD felt like a relief to me, and I felt a relief. I've been diagnosed with generalised anxiety disorder and depression as well, and every diagnosis I've had, it sounds like I'm collecting them like Pokemon or something. It's really not that great. I assure you I would rather be a person who doesn't have these issues, because they've impacted my life to the point where I can't even go to uni, so I'm studying from home, which I'm proud of as well, because I'm doing a degree from home. I'm still going to achieve my dreams. I'm just going to go about it in a sensible way, which is going to be the best for my mental health. I want to look after myself. I truly want to be here, and I want to be alive, and I want to fight these constant suicidal feelings, and I want to get through life, and I feel like I can do that. I really am working on structuring my life now, like how some people structure healthy eating in their lives and they think about what they're going to eat in their diet. I think about myself emotionally and giving myself time and all these kind of weird emotional things. I have to think about it like that. But yeah, having my diagnosis was a huge weight off my shoulders, because it feels real and you feel very validated. And like I said, some people don't like a diagnosis, and that's fine, that's up to them, but for me it felt validating, and I'm not ashamed of it at all. I feel like a lot of people who don't want labels in terms of mental illness, I think, well, sometimes, not all people, but sometimes people don't want it because of the stigma, really. I think they feel like they're going to be judged. They don't want to be like the weird person. But what I think is, if you have a mental illness or a personality disorder, it's not your fault. It's not something to be ashamed of. It's just a part of who you are as a person. Now, I don't know if I'll get a good or a bad response to this video. All I know is that I'm glad that I have made it. I've wanted to make it for a while, and I finally feel brave enough to do that and to talk about it and to be 100% honest. And that can be hard for people with BPD because of the stigma and the way people react to these things. So I hope that your opinion of me hasn't changed because of this. I do have a personality disorder. I have borderline personality disorder or emotionally unstable personality disorder, and I try to be a good person, and I try to do good in the world, and I think that I am a normal person. Some people say when they watch my videos, you know, you don't seem mentally ill, you don't seem like you have this or that. That's because people who suffer with these things have been suffering with them for a long time. We've learned lots of coping mechanisms to mask them because of the stigma, and also we are just normal people. We're just normal people, and lots of people have different struggles in their lives. Some people have physical disabilities or issues that they deal with physically. For some of us, it's our minds that do that. We all have these issues. Every person has an issue of some sort. Just so happens that mine are in the old brain, which is unfortunate, but you know, you got to deal with what you got. Okay, I love you loads. Please be kind in the comments, and if you are someone with BPD or emotionally unstable personality disorder, then I hope this has helped you. I know it's really long, but it has to be long because I want it to be honest and have it out there definitively. So yeah, I love you loads, and I do post about this on my Tumblr blog, by the way, so if you want to follow that, I'll put the link in the description box, and if you want to talk to me about BPD, that's fine. I answer asks and that kind of thing. I'm not an expert, I'm just someone who deals with it. Yeah, okay, I love you loads, and I'll see you really soon. Bye!